lot of crazy things happening in the world today.
A lot.
A whole lot, but you can't help to wonder, man, what the hell? Every day something crazy.
Something new happened.
Oh my God.
Like Kamala Harris going into Fox News for interview.
Oh my God. The interview only lasted 26 minutes.
I didn't watch it.
It was a hard time going through or sitting through.
I listened though.
It was really hard.
It was.
Turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years, so what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is
tell
about
pollsters,
turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become, but listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president, one, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Bear just used a soundbite to try to clear Donald Trump of saying a thing in which he cut out the part where he says it. Watch.
It is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff because they made up the Russia hoax. It took 2 years to solve the problem. Absolutely nothing was done wrong, et cetera, et cetera.
An investigation that's 4 years in the making, and we finally have the conclusions, more than 300 pages released by the Justice Department. Now, it has now been transmitted to members of Congress who also are going to want to bring John Durham in to review some of the findings. But the bottom line is this. The investigation found that the FBI failed in many, many ways, things that we already knew from a previous Inspector General report, and I'll read you just a part of it, of John Durham's conclusion. He says, based on the review of Crossfire Hurricane and related intelligence activities, we conclude that the Department and the FBI failed to uphold their important mission of strict fidelity to the law in connection with certain events and activities described in this report.
Who commissioned the Steele dossier?
The Steele dossier was done by Fusion GPS, who was hired by Perkins Coie, who represented the Clinton campaign. And
so what role did the Clinton campaign play in this hoax?
I'm sorry, did they play?
What role did the Clinton campaign play in this hoax?
The Clinton campaign funded the work, opposition research that was done by Fusion GPS, and GPS paid Mr. Steele for the dossier.
And who in the Clinton campaign approved that relationship?
Well, we lay some of that out in the report. I think it was Mr. Elias, who was general counsel to the campaign, who engaged the services of Fusion GPS.
Mr. Jordan referenced the Clinton plan intelligence. Exactly what was the Clinton plan?
Based on declassified documents in the public record, there was intelligence information that was received at virtually the same time that the information came from the Australians. I mean, within a day or two. That intelligence included information that there was a purported plan designed by one of Mrs. Clinton's foreign policy advisors to create a scandal tying Donald Trump to the Russians. That's the essence of the intelligence as contained in the declassified information.
The Hunter Biden laptop story in the wake of those revelations from Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg about content censorship over government pressure. The Hunter Biden story was initially flagged as potential Russian disinformation and was treated that way by the media and on social media, but the story was factual. So how is it being covered now? Here's Fox News media analyst, host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz.
It was at this Delaware computer shop that Hunter Biden's infamous laptop became a symbol, not only of the president's son's personal and legal problems, but of a major media embarrassment. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg admitted in a letter to Republican Congressman Jim Jordan that his company suppressed a New York Post report on the computer shortly before the 2020 election. At the time, more than 50 former top intelligence officials, including Leon Panetta, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, and James Clapper, signed a letter saying the laptop story has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation.
They're dangerous for our country. We have China, we have Russia, we have all these countries. If you have a smart president, they can all be handled. The more difficult are, the Pelosi's, these people, they're so sick and they're so evil. If they would spend their time trying to make America great again, it would be so easy to make this country great. But when I heard about that, they were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. But think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
All right.
They're the threat to democracy.
And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes.
So egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death.
That's right, he said that. Mm-hmm. That's correct.
He is suggesting that you be punished by death. The former commander-in-chief to his former top military advisor.
Look, I'm a soldier. I've been faithful and loyal to the Constitution of the United States for 44 and a half years. And my family and I have sacrificed greatly for this country, and my mother and father before them. And, as much as these comments are directed at me, it's also directed at the institution of the military. And there's 2.1 million of us in uniform. And the American people can take it to the bank that all of us, every single one of us, from private to general, we're loyal to that Constitution and we'll never turn our back on it no matter what the threats, no matter what the humiliation, no matter what. If we're willing to die for that document, if we're willing to deploy to combat, if we're willing to lose an arm, a leg, an eye, to protect and support and defend that document and protect the American people, then we're willing to live for it too. So I'm not going to comment directly on those things, but I can tell you that this military, this soldier, me, will never turn our back on that Constitution.
But for the record, was there anything inappropriate or treasonous about the calls you made to China?
Absolutely not. Zero. None.
It almost seems odd to ask this question because the former commander-in-chief seems to be calling for your execution. Are you worried about your safety?
I've got adequate safety precautions. I wish those comments had not been made, but they were, and we'll take appropriate measures to ensure my safety and the safety of my family.
General Milley today at his retirement ceremony said, quote, "We don't take an oath from a wannabe dictator." Do you actually
General
believe that
Milley, what he
down?
did is really treasonous. If you look at what he said to China, he's either stupid or it's treason. But what he said to China should never be allowed. That can never be allowed in our country.
Did you suggest
and you know what,
China?
General Milley, who I know, he's a lazy guy, who left billions and billions of dollars worth of equipment with the Taliban. General Milley's a lazy guy who's not very smart.
We, the military, are not only apolitical, we are nonpartisan. You can't pick sides.
June 1st, 2020. Was that a turning point for you as chairman?
I think it was, yeah. I realized that I stepped into a political minefield and I shouldn't have.
He's talking about the day when President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act and deploy the U.S. Army to put down the unrest on America's streets. General Milley did tell us he was so disillusioned with the former president's actions, he nearly resigned. Instead, according to former Defense Secretary Mark Esper, he and the general made a pact to protect the military from becoming politicized or misused.
Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump. You call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
But
is,
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
after George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand.
Actor George Clooney, who co-hosted a campaign fundraiser for President Biden just last month, raising record numbers of money for his re-election campaign, is out now with a New York Times op-ed titled, "I love Joe Biden, but we need a new nominee." He writes in part, quote, "It's devastating to say it, but the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe Big Effing Deal Biden of 2010. He wasn't even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate." Clooney says he's a lifelong Democrat and helped President Biden raise more than $30 million at that fundraiser in June.
You're a man you're a Democrat, but you're slightly to the left, as it were, in American politics.
Sure.
You're a friend of President Biden. You've known him for a long time.
Sure.
And looking at his poll numbers, which are really quite bad at the moment, things have gone wrong. What would you say about what's happened to the White House since he's taken over, and what's happened to America since he's taken over?
Well, I mean, you can't, it's like taking a battered child and thinking everything's going to be okay, and, his first day in school. There's a lot of things that have to be repaired. There's a lot of healing that has to happen, and it's going to take time. Poll numbers come up and go down. I would expect them to go back up again. Donald Trump's numbers went up and down.
He's still there, prowling around in the rhododendrons.
Yeah. He's going to be a factor for a while. It's so funny because he was just this knucklehead. I knew him before he was a president. He was just a guy who was chasing girls. Every time you went out, he'd come over and be like, "What's the name of that girl?" That's all he was. And the idea that there's this whole group of people that, that they think he's the champion of, which he certainly can't stand in real life. But, he's gonna play this out for a while, and we'll see where we go with it as a country. My hope is we have a little better sense than to do.
You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
Do you think there is a danger in Donald Trump being president again?
Well, I'll always be proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration. And for 4.5 years, President Trump was not only my president, but he was my friend. We worked very closely to create a record of prosperity at home, 7 million good-paying jobs. We rebuilt our military. We saw more than 300 conservatives appointed to our courts. We took down the ISIS caliphate,
we brought about peace in the Middle East. But obviously it didn't end well. And while the President and I parted amicably, I believe as we look to the future that we'll have better choices. Irrespective of the indictment, I want the American people to know that I had no right to overturn the election. And then on that day, President Trump asked me to put him over the Constitution. But I chose the Constitution, and I always will. I mean, I really do believe that anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. What the President maintained that day, and frankly has said over and over again over the last 2.5 years, is completely false. And it's contrary to what our Constitution and the laws of this country provide. I dismissed it out of hand, but sadly the President was surrounded by a group of crackpot lawyers that kept telling him what his itching ears wanted to hear. And while I made my case to him of what I understood my oath of the Constitution to require, the President ultimately, continued to demand that I choose him over the Constitution. And so in this moment, irrespective of how this case plays out, I want the American people to know that I believe with all my heart that by God's grace I did my duty that day.
Madam Vice President, two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the #1 threat?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel, I was there. Most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack, working with the heads of our military and doing what America must always do to defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend itself, and to give American support to be able to allow Israel to have the resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that
but those
is,
proxies were getting funded by
my commitment
Iran.
To that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's
that
administration
go towards
that
the Iran regime,
that we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and losers,
Hamas,
has diminished the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
I would like that we would have a conversation that is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this election, and the contrast is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a decision
and there are critics
that they feel
who look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things.
There's more to say. I have
there
much more
there
to
are
say,
a lot of
actually.
things that people want to learn about you and your policies, and
Yes.
that's why we
I invite
you
everyone
here.
to go to kamalaharris.com, and you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them. And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do
And that's why
intend
we
to do to
invited you
strengthen
here
our economy,
to see where you were in 2019 and where you are
support
now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
And
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What we can say is, I don't know, it's like there's really nothing you can do at this point.
Nope.
You just gotta like see it happen. You just gotta like watch it on 3D. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and just watch it all play out.
The drama.
The whole drama, shenanigans play out. And what can you do? But it's election season, so just know that there's more shenanigans on the way.
Yep.
So, if you're new to the channel, you know it's JEJE Vibe.
Oh, JEJE.
You know you gotta hit the like and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy the JEJE Vibe family.
We're out of here now.
See you in the next one.
Bye-bye. Oh, JEJE.